Por favor, vamos tomando os assentos. Quem ainda não se acomodou, peço desculpas já um pouquinho pelo atraso. Nosso palestrante ilustre vem vindo de São Paulo. Na verdade, já desembarcou no nosso aeroporto, está em deslocamento aqui para o nosso ato. Ele viria um pouquinho mais cedo, deu um problema no voo, acabou que substituindo aí, ingressando no voo do meio-dia e chegando às 14 horas, 14h05, e já está em deslocamento. Então, rapidamente, saudar a todos os presentes, sem muita cerimônia e protocolo. Queria convidar já para iniciar o nosso prefeito Sebastião Melo para compor aqui a mesa conosco, enquanto a gente vai formando aqui essa composição. Convidar a representante do Procurador-Geral de Justiça do RS, doutora Alexandre Saltz, doutora Ana Maria Marquesan, para compor aqui conosco. Por favor, doutora Ana, nossa competente promotora do meio ambiente de Porto Alegre, por alguns anos, agora não mais. Por favor, fique à vontade, doutora Ana. Defensor público Renato Munhoz, por favor, representando a Defensoria na mesa aqui conosco, só para a gente fazer a introdução. Representando a Câmara Municipal de Porto Alegre, o vereador Gessé Sangalli. Por favor, vereador Gessé. Por favor, nosso autor, organizador do Caos Planejado e um dos grandes apoiadores aqui desse evento, que nos deu a oportunidade de trazer o Alain, Antony Ling, por favor, esteja aqui conosco. A nossa diretora de Planejamento Urbano, a Patrícia Tchepke, competente na revisão do plano diretor, junto também com a coordenadora de Planejamento Urbano, a Vanesca Henrique Paiva. Por favor, Vanesca, senta aqui conosco. Só salientando aqui, em função, não temos o cerimonial, mas queria ressaltar, agradecer a presença do Dr. João Pedro Xavier, que é promotor de Justiça de Habitação e Defesa da Ordem Urbanística, Dr. Felipe Teixeira Neto, promotor de Justiça e Defesa do Meio Ambiente, a doutora Annelise Steingler, que deve estar chegando aqui, confirmou presença, promotora do Meio Ambiente, o Dr. Luiz Felipe de Aguiar, promotor de Justiça de Habitação e Defesa da Ordem Urbanística, vereador Tiago Albert está aqui conosco, vereadora Mari Pimentel, Clarice de Oliveira, presidente do IAB, Vicente Brandão, vice-presidente da ASBEA, representando a ASBEA, Cláudio Teitelbaum, presidente do Sindicato da Indústria da Construção Civil, está aqui conosco. Também temos a presença da secretária adjunta do Meio Ambiente, nossa secretária Cíntia, o secretário do Planejamento, César Schirmer, está aqui conosco, secretária adjunta da Regularização Fundiária, Simone Somen, secretário Léo Voigt, está desde cedo aí conosco, da Secretaria de Desenvolvimento Social, doutor Nelson Marisco, procurador-geral adjunto do Meio Ambiente e Urbanismo, lá da Procuradoria-Geral do município. Bom, queria só fazer um pouquinho do contexto. A gente está, prefeito e promotora, doutora Ana, no processo de revisão do nosso plano diretor, e hoje a gente tem uma rica oportunidade aqui de debater, aprender um pouquinho com alguém que já fez uma caminhada em diversas prefeituras, cidades pelo mundo, foi coordenador, diretor de planejamento urbano da ONU por muitos anos, uma referência do urbanismo contemporâneo, tem uma vivência muito prática da cidade. Isso nos chamou bastante atenção, assim, a partir da obra dele, A Ordem Sem Design, que eu recomendo a todos que não tiveram a oportunidade de ler, fazer a leitura. Realmente traz uma vivência muito prática das reais necessidades da cidade, qual o caminho que o planejamento urbano, que o plano diretor deve seguir. Às vezes a gente fica, e ouve, quando fala em plano diretor, muito vinculado às regras urbanísticas, os recuos, afastamento, altura, tu tem essa referência de plano diretor, mas o plano diretor ele deve ser muito mais do que isso. Ele deve se propor a ser um planejamento estratégico para resolver os desafios verdadeiros da cidade. Resolvendo esses desafios, que são do dia a dia da cidade, tu retém o talento dentro da cidade, tu atrai novos talentos, e o talento ele gera riqueza, ele faz transformação econômica, mas especialmente transformação social. Então é nessa perspectiva que a gente quer ouvir hoje um pouco a palestra do Alain, para ele nos trazer um pouco dessa caminhada global que ele tem e vivência em diversas prefeituras. Eu vou pedir para a doutora Ana, então, que nos recepciona hoje, e agradecer já mais uma vez a parceria e o apoio do Ministério Público, sempre nas causas da nossa cidade, especialmente por nos emprestar hoje o auditório e receber esse convidado ilustre.
Boa tarde a todos. É um grande prazer recebê-los na nossa casa, mostrar a cidade pulsante, né? O interesse da comunidade em relação a debater um tema extremamente relevante, que é o planejamento urbano. Parabenizo o nosso prefeito, nosso secretário da SMAMUS, doutor Marisco, demais integrantes da mesa. E, em relação ao Ministério Público, que hoje cedeu esse espaço para debates aqui, eu diria, e faço aqui também eco às palavras do nosso coordenador do Centro de Apoio da Ordem Urbanística, doutor Cláudio Ari, que, em razão de um problema de saúde, não pôde se fazer presente. E a nossa mensagem, enquanto instituição incumbida de defender os interesses sociais indisponíveis da sociedade, de fazer valer a Constituição Federal e a legislação infraconstitucional, a nossa mensagem é: a Constituição Federal, em vários dispositivos, ela reconhece o direito da propriedade privada, mas sempre que ela fala, que ela segura esse direito, ela não descura de dizer, observada a sua função social. Quando a Constituição Federal regra a função social da propriedade no meio urbano, e quando ela o faz em relação ao meio rural, ali também ela faz um detalhamento de como a propriedade privada vai observar a função social. Em relação ao meio urbano, né, secretário, ela é muito clara. Estará compatível com a função social da propriedade, aquela propriedade que observar o plano diretor. Portanto, o plano diretor, no ordenamento jurídico brasileiro, ele tem um status constitucional. E não é qualquer plano diretor, é um plano diretor participativo, democrático, um plano diretor que procure fazer cumprir todas as funções sociais da cidade. E após a Constituição de 88, levaram alguns anos, e nós conseguimos, né, ter finalmente uma lei que disciplina a função social da propriedade no meio urbano, que é o chamado Estatuto da Cidade. E lá no Estatuto da Cidade estão previstas várias figuras, vários instrumentos que justamente dialogam com essa ideia de função social da propriedade, com a ideia, né, de uma cidade sustentável, com uma ideia de uma cidade que procure construir esse plano, que é um plano evidentemente dinâmico, senão não seria plano, e que observe, por exemplo, esse fenômeno novo, que é o fenômeno das mudanças climáticas, né, para as quais nós estamos contribuindo muito com o nosso tipo de vida, com o nosso estilo de vida, e agora nós temos que procurar medidas de adaptação, medidas de mitigação e desenvolvimento de resiliência. Eu tenho acompanhado, ainda que mais como alguém que está espectadora, né, que a prefeitura está se preparando também para fazer frente a essas questões, e eu os parabenizo em relação a isso. Portanto, a posição do Ministério Público é justamente defender, né, um plano diretor construído de acordo com os ditames constitucionais, com a participação democrática, que leve em conta também os anseios do mercado, mas que não se regule pelas regras do mercado, nem sempre compatíveis e adequadas com o bem-estar da comunidade, com o desenvolvimento urbano, ambiental e sustentável. Então, desejo a todos um excelente evento, né? Fazia tempo que eu não via esse auditório tão cheio. Parabéns, secretário. Sinal que o tema é de muito interesse para todo cidadão porto-alegrense. Infelizmente, não vou poder ficar, porque eu tenho um compromisso agora às 15 horas, mas certamente vai ficar disponível no YouTube, depois eu vou poder ouvir essa fala do arquiteto Alain Bertraud. Obrigada.
Obrigado, doutora Ana. Queria pedir uma salva de palmas para o nosso palestrante, então, que acaba de chegar. Uma alegria. Thank you, Alain, for being here in Porto Alegre again. You are an inspiration for us. Vamos ouvir, antes de iniciar efetivamente a palestra, então, o nosso prefeito Sebastião Mello, rapidamente fazer a sua fala.
Bom, primeiro, boa tarde. E nós estamos aqui para ouvir o nosso professor. Eu já tive a oportunidade de estar com ele numa palestra, acho que vale a pena. Foi um tempo curto, acho que hoje vai ser um tempo, né, um pouco mais longo. Bom, gente, primeiro eu acho que nós vivemos a era das cidades, o mundo já viveu várias eras dos grandes impérios, das grandes nações, hoje você vive a era das cidades, especialmente na América Latina e especialmente no Brasil, onde 86% da população vivem nas cidades. Segundo, não há uma cidade só dentro, há dezenas de cidades dentro da cidade. Acho que o plano diretor tem que levar em conta essa discussão. Eu penso que um plano diretor que não discute área de risco, que não discute regulação fundiária, que não discute transporte coletivo, onde as pessoas querem cada vez mais morar perto de onde trabalham, que não discute espaços públicos. Aliás, Germano, nós temos conversado muito sobre isso, e antes do final da nossa gestão, nós vamos criar um departamento, uma diretoria específica só para cuidar dos espaços públicos da cidade, que eu acho que é uma das coisas mais extraordinárias que a cidade tem. Então, eu acho que aqui tem uma visão um pouco diferente de muitos sobre o plano diretor, doutora Marquesano. Ele pensa diferente de muitos que esta casa pensa e que outros pensam, e eu acho que só na democracia isso é possível. Ou seja, ouvir os dois lados, aproveitar o que tem de bom, tem do outro, fazer um mix disso e chegar na Câmara de Vereadores, tem muitos vereadores, para revisar o plano diretor, que é uma tarefa importante para a cidade. Então, parabéns, Germano, por mais esse desafio que está posto, e vamos à palestra. Muito obrigado. Tá?
Obrigado, prefeito Sebastião Mello. Queria registrar a presença antes de passar para o Ling, fazer uma apresentação, uma introdução, assim, um pouquinho, uma contextualização, isso, e a gente já desce só um pouquinho, prefeito, já descemos. Saudar a vereadora de Florianópolis, Manu Vieira, está aqui conosco também, já vejo a doutora, está ali, a doutora Annelise também já adentrou aqui, está aqui, junto com o doutor Felipe, sejam bem-vindos, sempre boa a oportunidade do debate, a gente aprender um pouquinho mais com quem já caminhou e vive, né, além, claro, das questões legais, doutora Ana, dos processos participativos, mas existe uma vida real da cidade que ela pulsa desafios urbanos enormes e que a gente tem que achar, né, cada vez mais, sair do plano teórico para ir para o plano de ação, e por isso nos encanta muito, né, a caminhada do Alain, a experiência, a vivência, né, prática das prefeituras mais ricas, as mais pobres, né, produzindo transformação social. Ling, por favor, vamos pedir para tu fazer uma apresentação e depois a gente desce para nos contextualizar quem é o Alain.
Boa tarde. Bom, para mim é uma grande honra poder apresentar o Alain Bertraud, que eu considero o maior urbanista da nossa época aqui na nossa cidade de Porto Alegre. A carreira do Alain em planejamento urbano começou quando ele interrompeu seus estudos na Escola de Belas Artes de Paris e partiu para a Índia a partir de Paris a pé, pegando carona num trajeto de quase 10 mil quilômetros, com o objetivo de chegar na cidade de Chandigarh, que foi projetada e estava sendo construída pelo Le Corbusier, um renomado urbanista e arquiteto suíço. Chegando lá, o Alain trabalhou com Pierre Jeanneret, primo de Corbusier, que estava à frente da execução, e desde então começou a perceber que a cidade informal que se desenvolvia junto ao canteiro de obras de Chandigarh funcionava melhor que a cidade modernista que estava sendo projetada. Após retornar à universidade e concluir sua graduação, ele atuou como urbanista na cidade de Tlemcen, na Argélia, que recém tinha conquistado sua independência. Na época, Tlemcen tinha cerca de 80 mil habitantes e hoje tem quase 1 milhão. E uma das primeiras atribuições do Alain como urbanista na cidade foi aplicar o Código de Urbanismo na aprovação de projetos, que era uma espécie de código de edificações que tinha sido importado da França. Alain rapidamente percebeu a incongruência das regras com a realidade do clima e da arquitetura tradicional da Argélia e pediu autorização ao seu superior para simplesmente ignorar o código e utilizar o seu bom senso como arquiteto na aprovação das construções da população da cidade que crescia. Em seguida, Alain foi para Sanaa, no Iêmen, onde trabalhou como urbanista, planejando a expansão da cidade que crescia rapidamente. Mas muito diferente do que ficar no escritório fazendo desenhos de como ele acreditava que a cidade deveria crescer, o trabalho de Alain Bertraud envolveu traçar a expansão viária da cidade, utilizando instrumentos topográficos básicos e um Land Rover que desenhava um traçado na areia do deserto, negociando por onde as ruas deveriam passar com pequenos agricultores e nômades que ocupavam os arredores da cidade, como mostra a imagem. Até hoje, Alain descreve essa experiência como uma das mais relevantes na sua carreira como urbanista, coerente com a sua proposição de que o urbanismo deveria focar no planejamento e na gestão da expansão urbana e dos espaços públicos. Alain Bertraud foi urbanista residente em cidades como Bangkok, São Salvador, em El Salvador, Porto Príncipe, no Haiti, Nova York e Paris. E de 1980 a 1999, Bertraud liderou a área de planejamento urbano do Banco Mundial. Nessa época, Bertraud pôde acompanhar a transição econômica da União Soviética, assim como a abertura econômica da China comunista, vivenciando na prática como funcionavam ou não funcionavam cidades totalmente planejadas, ausentes de mercados de terra. Ao se aposentar do banco, Alain passou a trabalhar como consultor independente. Atualmente, ele é pesquisador visitante ilustre no Mercatus Center da Universidade George Mason e Senior Fellow no Marron Institute of Urban Management na Universidade de Nova York, a NYU. Ele publicou artigos no Journal of Urban Economics, Journal of Housing Economics e Regional Science and Urban Economics, que focam no impacto urbano da complexa interação entre mercado imobiliário, rede de transportes e as regulações de uso do solo. Em 2018, ele publicou seu livro Order Without Design, How Markets Shape Cities, pelo MIT Press, que busca diminuir a lacuna entre planejamento operacional urbano e economia urbana, ao mesmo tempo que relata e utiliza da sua experiência de décadas trabalhando no mundo inteiro para ilustrações práticas da sua teoria. Originalmente publicado em inglês, tivemos o prazer de, através do Caos Planejado, trazer a obra para o Brasil, através da editora Bookman, também daqui de Porto Alegre, que acreditou na relevância da obra para o seu estudo sobre cidades. O nome da obra é Ordem Sem Design e, enfim, até tem algumas cópias disponíveis aqui à venda após o evento. E com isso, passo a palavra para o urbanista Alain Bertraud. Obrigado.
Convidar, então, a mesa a se desfazer para poder assistir a palestra. Só explicando um pouquinho da dinâmica do evento. Então, neste primeiro momento, a gente ouve o Alain, 45, 50 minutos, no tempo dele, que ele puder dispor aqui para nós. E depois a gente tem uma rodada de perguntas, aí sim, coordenado pela nossa diretora de Planejamento Urbano e a coordenadora Vanesca, junto com a equipe, algumas perguntas já organizadas para ter uma dinâmica um pouquinho mais de interação com o Alain. Então, por favor, à vontade, Alain Bertraud.
Shall I start? Thank you very much for inviting me here, and especially on this special occasion of discussing something technical. Oh, okay. Oh, yes. Thank you. I enjoy talking about things which are have an immediate application. Sometimes one have to take a much maybe higher view, but I think that in urban planning there is no details. You have to have a conceptual view of what is city, but at the same time you should not ignore small details like the design of sidewalk, for instance, or the extension of a bus line. So, and you have to go back and forth all the time if you want to be efficient. You know, but our goal is not to discuss ideas so much, but to have results on the ground. This is the important thing. And those results on the ground could be measured by seeing how the benefit of the development of the city benefit a different part of the population. And I think this is a very important aspect. We should not just aggregate the benefit, but see the way they are distributed. For instance, in terms of education, transport, housing in particular, I think it's very important not to just calculate how many dwelling units are built every year, but depending on your income, what is the type of dwelling unit you can have access to. So let us start with this presentation. First, excuse me, first I apologize for being late. You know, it was not quite my fault, but I'm very embarrassed by it a little. Okay, let us start now. See what this, yes. So this is the outline I will follow. I cannot read my, the origin of the master plan. What were the first master plan? You know, the master plan is an old idea, although it has changed meanings. You know, we can trace master plan. You know, one well known in Europe is Miletus master plan, which was 500 BC, and then I have seen some in China also, which date about the same time. Basically, well, so this is what we will discuss. Then I cannot read for that. Yeah, and then we will see the evolution of the concept of master plan over the year, and especially I will say the last 50 years. The concept of master plans evolved very much. And then, so I will propose, you know, I will be a little critical of master plan, but of the modern approach to master plan, for one good reason, is that I have participated in many of them, and sometime even I have been the principal author of some of them. So I know the, let's say, the limitation of them and the frustration in preparing that. And finally, I will propose some solution. I'm not proposing to eliminate planning, obviously, not even master plan in a certain way. I am just suggesting to adapt the master plan to the management of a complex modern cities. In particular, you know, the great difference in preparing master plans, say 50 years ago and now, is that now we have much more data about what is going on in a city. 50 years ago, if we wanted to know something about traffic, for instance, congestion, or we would have to do a origin-destination survey. It will have to be designed. We will send kind of flyers to people asking them, where do you come from? Where are you going? Do you do that every day? And then we collected that and we aggregated that. It gave us a valid idea. On the road, we will put also a line, you know, a pneumatic line, which every time a car passes, it will give a bip, and we will count that. And so that will give us an idea of the traffic. When we wanted to upgrade a plan, usually we will ask to have a new aerial survey of the city done, and it will take several years because we had to have the clearance of the military. Then it will have to be, you know, the picture developed, and then it will have to be modified to have orthophotos, so it will take a long time. So we were really going a bit in a blind way, and that I think why many plans are not very quantitative, I think, about the existing situation. It's, you know, if you do not have much data, it's much easier to say this is what we are going to do than to say this is a problem. You know, you know vaguely what is the problem. And so now we are in a completely different situation. I will say we are in an opposite situation. We can generate an enormous amount of data for a lot of different sources, but we don't always know how to use this data. And that's why sometimes you hear about smart cities. Sometimes smart cities generate a lot of data, but you never see very much analysis of it. You know, so I think that all this data I think are very important, but we have to know how to use them in the same way as the old planners knew how to use a map or used to use the result of the census, for instance. I'll tell you one type of data that I didn't know was available. I became aware of it just 3 months ago in New York. In New York, as you know, and since the pandemic, we have a large amount of office buildings which are vacant in the center in Manhattan. And it's difficult to know really how many are vacant because the company who used to rent them have a long lease and hoping that the employee will come back to the office, they are keeping their lease. So you have a number of offices which are vacant and the lease has been canceled, so that we know about it. But there are maybe a larger number where the lease are still going, so we have no way of knowing if the employees are coming or not. And it's very important, of course, for traffic, for the economy of the city, in all the facilities which are, especially in Manhattan, the restaurant, the cafe, or, you know, there a lot of Starbucks, for instance, closed down in Manhattan itself, which has never happened before. They were usually very crowded. So we have a new type of data. In Manhattan, the water consumption is measured electronically twice a day. So to find which offices are empty, we have just to get the data from the water company, and we see the one which are empty, leased but empty, and the one, some we knew they were empty. So that gives us a guidance, you know, of what is happening. Again, so I tell this story because I think that what is important for a management tool, if we consider that the master plan is a management tool, what is important is to monitor what the city is doing in real time. And maybe not every day or but at least every quarter. To know, you know, for instance, the price of land, the rents, and not the average rents or the median rent, but the rents distributed by different income groups. All the cities expanding, the transport, you know, the time people come, you know, take to go to their work, you know, all these things I think we have to monitor in real time. I am talking here about the field I am more familiar with, but of course, we should apply that, of course, also to schools, primary school, kindergarten, to know the attendance, to know the rate of people dropping out. We should know what is, I think, very important in every city that have housing affordability problem, is to measure when a young person graduates either from high school or university, does this person is able to find a house? This person might be able to find a job, but do they find a house? And if the salary allow them to have you know, afford a house? We have, I don't know the situation in you know, in Porto Alegre at all, but 1 month ago I was in Vancouver. And the affordability is so bad in Vancouver. You know, you need for the average 10 years median houses, 12 years salary to pay for one apartment, or, you know, of 120 square meter. So, what is the impact of that in the long run? The impact is that you see that the demography, a lot of young people and young households get a job, and then they realize that they cannot survive in the city because the rents are so high, and they move to a city, a smaller city, which is much less attractive, and where they will be much less productive. And then we see these younger people moving, and already on the age pyramid of the city, you see that this age pyramid is in fact, has not so much, the people who are 20 years old or 25 are starting to be missing. And usually a city like Porto Alegre, a large city which is affluent, receive migration of younger people who come to work there because it's much more attractive. Again, people come to cities because of the people who are there. They don't come to cities, they come to city because of course the attraction, maybe the restaurant, the bar, the concert, but basically because of people who are there. So if you are missing a generation of people, you will find the effect only probably in 10 or 15 years, but that will be terrible. I have seen that in cities of Japan where the young people systematically go to Tokyo, to 2 or 3 large cities, and all the cities which are smaller than 5 million people, in fact, are losing population. And this is we don't know how to deal with something like that, especially when the city is aging. You have a large number of old people and you don't have the young. So this is a very long introduction, excuse me, but just to explain why a city should be managed should be managed every day. And not once every 10 years. I mean, I'm not implying that the master plan is, but there is a bit an implication of that in a master plan done every 10 years. I know you update it from time to time, but the idea of the, sorry, I will continue here of the first master plan. The idea of the master plan.
Your reference.
Thank you. That would be easier. Thank you very much. That's very nice.
Just for reference.
Yes. Okay. Sorry.
Freeze. Sorry.
Okay, never mind. It was not nice. The idea of the master plan is to monitor what is happening in the city all the time. Originally, I show here one of the first known master plan. They might have been before, the plan of Miletus by the first Hippodamus, the first urban planner known to, at least in the Western world. And that was a Greek city, a port city. And so the planner, the main job of the planner was to separate what was private and what was public. So what was private was, of course, the streets, and thank you very much. Thank you, that's very nice. What was private was a street, but also in a Greek city, there were some public amenities which were very important. One was the theater. Miletus was probably a city of, at most, when it was the largest, maybe 20,000 people. And it was unthinkable in Greece to have a city of 20,000 people without a theater, which isn't, and it was a big piece of real estate, and work, because you had to have, acoustic and everything. Then you had the tribunal, and you had also, of course, the agora, where the democracy took place. So the planner job was to locate those things, and the rest draw streets, so that means separate the public space from the private space, and then let the people after that use this private space the way they want it. So you can imagine, just looking at the plan, that you can see clearly the two parts of the port, that around the port you will have the merchants probably, you will have the people who repair the ships, you will have, I don't know if they had insurance at the time, maybe you had, so you will have the insurer, and then after that you will have a trader, people who will sell or something like that. But again, that was left entirely to the people themselves. And so the management of the city was mostly to maintain it and maintain the walls. You know, it was surrounded by walls, security was important, and from time to time to expand the walls when the city has to expand. Now, this was the origin, and I will say that up to the 19th century, it was again that. This is, you have recognized certainly the plan of Cerda for Barcelona. You know, the area which is black there was the area occupied by the built-up area of Barcelona at the time of Cerda. And Cerda, as certainly was commissioned by the elected official, but Cerda has the genius, I think, to expand the plan not for the next 5 years or 6 years, but much more, you know, what is represented, I think it's 12 times the existing built-up area. He extended, and what he did was exactly like in Miletus. He separated what was public and what was private, including reserving land for parks and things like that. So what is advantage? By the way, all the roads were not built, but what is the advantage of that? The advantage of that is that the land market works well. Obviously, the land which was closest to the built-up area will have a higher value. Now, imagine that he has only developed, you know, gave the street layout just around the existing city, saying that will be good enough for the next 5 years or 10 years. The land in this area, very close to the existing city, would have been very high because there was not much competition between landowner. But by giving a layout like that, which was so large, it allows the land market to work very well. If some landowner get too greedy, you could always go to the next block and the next block and the next block, and finally one will want. So that's the way markets work, and I think that was important. Now, you see, now this is an aerial photograph of few blocks, 6 blocks of the plan of Cerda, and you see that about 120 years later, the plan is exactly the way he planned it. You know, when you set the alignment of street, this is permanent. Very, very difficult to change it. You will never change it. So, should you agonize about that? No. So Cerda didn't know about cars. For instance, there were no cars at the time he did his plan. So you could argue that the width of streets maybe should be wider or not so wide or different. I don't think it matters. What it matters is that it allows the city to grow and to make land affordable by having a very large supply of land in advance. And you see how the market work inside the block. You see that it's a little messy, and this is exactly how the market works and how it should work. You know, that depending on the block, some people build a restaurant there, some office buildings, some are residential. By the way, the plan never say this is residential, this is, you know, that was a much modern invention. And I think that this is you know, in a way, the plan of Cerda, this is a type of plan we need in the long run. Now, this is not a replacement for the master plan. It's just important, I think, to have that in mind. Now, let us see, when this plan evolved from this time into something different, I think that it appears mostly, I think, after the Second World War, the first really master plan, and they start trying to be much more encompassing, and they were a document mostly based on needs for everything, rather than on what is affordable, and not so much looking at people, but the way people were living, because again, it was very difficult to get the data. Even on income, it was difficult to get the data. But say, this is the way the city will look in the future. And this is, of course, very, very pleasant, because you are not really linked too much to reality. You can plan and you can promise a lot of things. And I think that then it was a start of getting away from reality in a way, and being a document, a bit of anticipation. And sometimes if you look at needs, and many of our standards come there. For instance, if you have a minimum lot size, minimum apartment size, it has always been by somebody will say, well, an average family has 2 children, so they need at least 2 or 3 bedrooms, and the bed at this side, and you need a kitchen and this, and you end up with a minimum apartment size based on needs of a design. And then nobody calculates, well, what will be the price of such a minimum house? And where will it be? Depending on the price of land, maybe a house like that is affordable 20 kilometers from the city, but not in the center. So immediately when you have established this minimum area for a house or minimum lot size, you have decided where people will live depending on their income. If your transport system is not consistent with your plan, that means, if the implication is that if you are, let's say, below the 20 percentile, that means the 20% poor people in the population, and if you follow the plan, you will be able to afford a house only in a village which is pretty far away. If your transport system do not cover those villages, that means that the people who can afford a legal house will not be part of the labor market. They will not have a job. They will have difficulty having a job. So they will become even poorer. They will not participate in the life of the city. So you see those implications in chain. And I have seen that in many master plans, in New York, in Paris, in Bangkok, in Jakarta, practically everywhere. And it's, it's again this concept of basing a master plan on needs. So also there is a problem now within 2 or 3 years, to prepare a master plan. I don't know how long it takes for you, but usually it takes from 2 to 3 years. The city are a number of consultants, and they produce a lot of paper and data and things like that. And a lot of people discuss about it, of course. There is a lot of participation. That's a good thing. But then when the master plan is approved, this is supposed in a way to be a blueprint which will guide the city for the next 10 years or 5 years. I think you update the master plan every 5 years too. So, and I think this is not enough. This again, the parallel is a building. If you are an architect, I'm an architect myself too originally. If you are an architect, the more detailed is your plan, the better it is for when it's built. You should give every detail. And then there is a time where you prepare your plan, and then a time where the building is built. And in a way, the master plan concept follow the same pattern. You are like an architect designing this very large, complex building, which is a city, and then then during the rest of the time, you sit there and see if the master plan is implemented or not. this is not the way a modern city should be run. You know, a modern city should be run in real time. Imagine a firm like Apple, if they design a smartphone and they say, this is for 10 years, we are going to produce this smartphone during the next 10 years, and in 10 years we are going to redesign another one. This will never work. And a city is even more complex than, of course, a smartphone. So I think it should be monitored in real time. Yes, so the master plan very often also do not have a not very much economics. For instance, very seldom, again, I don't know how is your master plan, I have not seen it, but do not have much data about land prices, do not have much data about rents, do not have even much data about income. I'm not saying, the average income is fine, the median income, but you have to have a complete distribution of income in order to do something really valid. And now we have the tools to do that, to know by small tranche of income. For instance, if somebody, if you have a household which is living with one minimum salary, it's very different from a household living with two minimum salary, although in your category they will be probably considered poor and will be in one category. It's completely different, and you have to deal with them. So this is what I think a modern management tool should do. The income distribution also change over years. Hopefully people get richer, but you will have always a number of people who are in the tail, which are the poor, and you will have to pay a lot of attention to them. And again, this is only if you have the data. So what we need to replace that is, in fact, a permanent team of planners, engineers, and economists. I'm not saying that you should not hire consultant, but you should hire consultant only if there is a very specific study that you want done, like, for instance, flood protection or something like that, or maybe even on education or something. But you should have in the planning department a number of people who are monitoring all the cities evolving all the time. And these people, I think, have a very important role to play. They will have also to develop indicators linked to, for instance, housing affordability, and again, not aggregated, but divided by, you could, if you find it too abstract to talk about minimum wage or something, try to find some, do affordability by jobs. If you are a school teacher, what kind of housing you can get right now, given the prices of the in the thing. If you are a unskilled worker on a building site, where do you live? Do you have a family? Where do you live? Where can you live? And then what can the city can do about it? The growth of the informal sector, which usually in Brazil you call favela, come exactly from that a number of people are forgotten in the standard we developed, minimum lot size, minimum street width, and they can afford what is legal, so they go in the illegal sector, which a lot of, but that's the only way to do it. The favelas, it's a safety valve. Which the people are involved in order to survive the inadequate minimum standards which have been established by the city, which are not affordable. The tendency in many cities, including right now in New York, is to say, okay, our standards are not affordable, but don't worry, we are going to bring subsidy, we are going to subsidize you. But the city do not have infinite resource. If you calculate the amount of subsidy which are required to provide a house to all the people who cannot afford them, The city doesn't have this money. So they start building some, or they play some tricks like inclusive zoning or something like that. I mean, there are a number of tricks you can play to give the impression that you are solving the problem. But at the end, again, if you say, what is this school teacher, where is this school teacher going to live, or where is this unskilled worker on the construction going to live, you'll find that if they are qualified to get assistance, they will be on a 10 years waiting list. Now, what do you do if you have a job in the city and you have to wait 10 years for a house? This is not serious. You see, we have to have a system where practically 90% of the people get their house through the normal market. I think that you should always have about probably from 5 to 10% of houses which are for emergency, which are completely subsidized by the state for people who have bad luck or bad health or whatever thing they have. So you should have some subsidizing. But as soon as I see in the plan the amount of subsidy going above 10%, I don't think this is serious. This means that people, in fact, are going on a waiting list for a long time, and most people will not get it, will not get anything. So again, this is the type of thing that a modern urban planning team should do. You know, develop these indicators. Sorry. At the same time, when a city develops in the next 10 years, for instance, the city is going to be confronted to external shocks. We have seen two recently. One was a pandemic, you know, that we didn't expect, but we had to react to it. And the second was inflation now, you know, inflation and, you know, the geopolitical situation, which is not very favorable. So a city has to react to that. And, you know, there will be maybe sometime more taxes or less taxes, or suddenly the city budget will, you know, they will have to pay more interest. You know, they have borrowed maybe at a low rate 5 years ago, and now they have. So the city has to respond immediately. They cannot say, well, we will wait for the next master plan to do it. So again, this is what, you know, what a permanent team will do. So we should, the planning team should also develop strategies to respond to the mayor and the city council. Well, one thing I want to insist, of course, I'm talking here about the technician in the planning department, but of course, we are in a democracy, and the priorities are set by the mayor and the city council. And there is no scientific way to establish priorities. It is a political decision. You know, you cannot write an equation and saying the priority in this city is education and transport or something like that. That doesn't exist. People who pretend to do that are, in my opinion, charlatan. Once the mayor and the city council have said our priority is housing for this group, then we technicians can start working and say, well, these are the alternatives, these are the strategy we could have. You know, developing more land or redeveloping the land which exists. You know, there are a number of things. Changing the standards, there are a lot of things we can propose. But we need priorities, we need a political decision to set this thing. So we develop strategies there. And those strategies, maybe we start them, and then we see that they fail. For instance, we think, well, we can expand the city, and we will expand, you know, every year, at least 50 hectares will be developed. This is our plan. And then after 2 or 3 years, we realize that it doesn't work. We have developed only 10 hectares. We have then to immediately change our strategy. We should not sit on it and wait for 10 years to see that. That's a bit a problem, I think, with many cities. Again, I'm talking about New York, Paris, or San Francisco, as well as probably Brazilian cities, is that once a city is engaged in something, they keep doing it even if it fails. hoping that maybe if they pour more money in it, it will work. And I think we have to be sincere. You know, we cannot make experiment on housing in a laboratory the way, for instance, engineer can do for certain things. It can work on laboratory. We don't have a laboratory. So our laboratory is the city itself. So if we fail, if a strategy fails, we should change it right away. So let us look at what a city, a modern management tool will look like, in my opinion. I mean, this is my opinion. Of course, there's nothing scientific about it. It's based, for me, on observing cities and working in cities and preparing master plan in the last 60 years. So the mayor and the city council set clear priority, objective, and constraint. This is the thing. The planning department create and maintain a demographic, geographic, economic database. This database is very important. It should be updated all the time. You know, it's not, again, a once every 10 years thing. And so you have a census, which is every 10 years, but you should have also, and I'm sure you have, intermediary survey, which allow you to update the census and update many other things. This should include also economic indicators, you know, this database. And this database should be in the planning department, and we will discuss later. Sorry. The planning department should develop also housing indicators. I get this idea of housing indicators, let's say economic indicators, and some of them will be housing. Some years ago, before the big crisis in 2008, 2008, yes. I had a colleague who was a professor of economics at Berkeley, and he gave a talk, and he says, I'm monitoring a lot of indicators about housing, and all of them are blinking red. We are going to have a big crisis. And then 2 years later, indeed, you know, the real estate sector collapsed. You remember that. I'm sure that this happened also in Brazil. And so I think that I realized this guy, by monitoring data, knew that we were going into a problem, and nobody in government, you know, probably some people read his paper and say, oh, this is interesting, but nobody took action. And in fact, we could have developed this data ourselves, and we could have that, and we could have taken preemptive action, and probably not completely avoid the crisis, but at least decrease its severity. So this is a way also of alerting the mayor and the city council of a crisis which is coming. And again, it could be in transport, it could be in housing, it could be in education, you know, if you have, you know, a lot of people. And then what is very important is that this database should be unique and maintained in the planning department, and should be communicated to the mayor, of course, to the public, but also to the line agency. So this is what I suppose that your executive branch is built a bit like that. You know, a normal firm has what they call staff, which is usually the executive plus the finance, and usually in a firm it will be human resources. And then you have the line agency. For instance, if it's a factory, the equivalent of the line agency will be the operating of factories, for instance, things like that. In the cities, you have the management of the city, the mayor, the city council, the executive, you know, the political one, and then the technical one is usually legal, finance, human resource, and you have some others. And then you have the line agency, which are in charge of a specific sector. Sorry. And it should be, you know, every line agency is responsible for a specific sector. For instance, water supply, storm drainage, education, police. And I think that it's very important. You know, each of those line agencies, by the way, usually are working on large work. For instance, transport. They are building a new highway or a BRT somewhere. And of course, the preparation and the execution of the BRT usually doesn't fit a 10 years master plan period. It's independent of that. If, for instance, the city is looking for a new source of water, this is a major project which will probably require transfer from the state to the city and maybe even from the federal government. So it's a long-run project, a very large public work project, completely independent of a master plan. However, when this project is done, for instance, distributing water, it's very important that the water company or the water department use exactly the same database as the city, the one established by the planner. I have seen many examples of cities where each line agency, for their own reason, use their own database, including densities. I've seen, for instance, transport department, managing buses and BRT or tramway, deciding about densities and making projection of densities just to justify their own operations, saying, if the density around our BRT grow that much in the next year or in the next 5 years, then our BRT is financially viable. And so they do their own thing. And then the water department will do something a bit different because they have their own agenda also. I think that here they have to use the database of the planning department, especially because to develop a database is expensive. There is no reason to duplicate it. And also, let's face it, to keep them honest. I think that's a very important role. And again, it's a full-time job. You cannot do that just from time to time. So here, by the way, if I will have to redo those slides, I show the arrows, the planning department, the database being fed to the line agency, but there is also a feedback on the other side. The people in the water department or transport knows a lot of things about transport and the way to operate transport or water or whatever, and that a planner don't know. So you should have always a feedback. When you have indicators or strategy, you will have a feedback. So the arrow should flow both ways. Excuse me. I won't go through this. I will leave you the slide here if you, I don't want to read these things. It's just an example of the indicators, the type of indicators you could have. For the indicators and the strategy especially, I give an example here. You should have indicators for the entire cities, and you should have indicators for the project and the strategy you propose. So let's say that here you find that there is a neighborhood which is particularly poor, and you did a survey and you are told that they are poor because they have no access to job. They have very poor transport in this area. I assume that. So you decide that you will increase transport in this area, the availability of transport, to have access to more jobs. So you are going to develop indicators to monitor this project of transport, new bus line that you put. And so the first, of course, you will have to have an input, you have to know how much it will cost, and you don't know yet the project, but probably the mayor, the finance department of the city will tell you, well, we could afford that much investment over that many years. So that will be the input. Many cities, by the way, very often when they describe their strategy, they stop at input. For instance, they say, in New York, for instance, we say, our schools are very bad. We are going to invest 10 billion in the next 10 years in our school. And then we stop there. So what we monitor is the amount of money we spend. We don't monitor the other indicators, which are output first. What do you do with the money? Do you hire more teachers, or do you build more schools? Do you raise the pay of teachers, for instance? I mean, there are many things you can do with the money. And then, sorry. What is important really is the last of the four indicators, impact. You know, if you put a new bus line, it's not for the sake of buying buses or operating buses. It's to have a result in this neighborhood. And so at the end, the impact will be a decrease in poverty or a decrease in unemployment, which will be a way of seeing that. So that's, if your strategy is not good, maybe then it was something else you will have to do. Maybe the school are very bad or something like that. You don't know. But you see, the important thing when you develop indicators is to have input, output, outcome, and impact. The raison d'etre of your investment is really the impact. The other are only intermediary levels, but that you have to monitor because you cannot expect an impact if you have no input. So these are but the input is not enough. I was telling you about the story of investing in education in New York. There was a huge, that was 20 years ago, huge investment in education. And again, what was monitored really was the dollars spent every year, and it was very impressive. And then after 10 years, we realized there was still the same number of dropouts. The score didn't increase. And we found that most of the money was spent in hiring more janitors. So there were much more janitors than teachers after some time, and that's the way the money. So that's why it's so important to have indicators which monitor really the way the city. And again, as you see, this cannot be done every 10 years. It has to be done every day, practically, by a very competent planning staff. So then I have practically finished my talk here. Just briefly, I will show you a modern urban management tool as is in Copenhagen, which do not follow that exactly. It's a little different, but I think it's a well-run city. It's also a small city. You know, Copenhagen, the city, the municipality itself is only 700,000 people, and the metropolitan area is only 1.5 million. It helps for transport, for instance, to be a small city. So it's not to show you that as a model, just as an example. What I found interesting in the way planning is done in Denmark is that you have regional planning authorities who develop a regional master plan, which they call it differently, but it's a regional planning, and they give the broad guideline of about especially transport between other cities, between cities and things like that. And but then what is interesting in the municipal plan, it's not really a master plan, by the way. Municipal plan, the time is 4 years. It corresponds exactly at the terms of a mayor. When a new mayor is elected, then he's obliged to declare his objective. And then the planner develops the strategy with the objective of the mayor. I think he has there's a number of months where the mayor and the city council are obliged to develop their objective. Because you cannot, technicians like us, cannot work on strategy or development if we don't have objectives. Everything is a priority at the same time. I mean, And then the municipality then have also local plans. Those local plans are not, nobody tell them when they have to do them, but say, let's say that part of the strategy of the mayor is to develop the western part of the city, for instance. And so then they will establish a local plan for this part of the city. It could be a transport plan, it could be just a layout, layout of street, it could be something else. So I think that this provides a lot of flexibility. And again, the municipal plan is not a master plan the way we used to prepare it, in 10 volumes with a 20 technical annex. It's just a series of a very broad objective. I will, the municipal plan, it's a political declaration of objective. And so I give you an example here of the text. You see how vague it is. So I'm not very enthusiastic, by the way, about this type of language. I think you could never disagree with it. When they say ensure a cohesive city with room for everyone, nobody could be against it. And it doesn't really tell you what are the priorities. But fortunately, they go a little further after that. And so, for instance, after that, after this objective, then they, for instance, here they say room for 10,000 new Copenhagen. So it doesn't say all sold here. It says, so when they say Copenhagen, that means the city which are living in the municipal area, not in the metropolitan area. That's... so you see here they become a little more specific. And then with this, you can, of course, the technician can develop a strategy and do detailed planning for this, and they can monitor it. You see that so I don't forcefully, I don't think some of these ideas are necessarily very good, but that's my opinion. You see, the land use plan of Copenhagen, the municipality is in dark red here, and they have a outer suburb in the shape of a hand. For some reason, they like it very much. I mean, it's interesting when you have a symbol like that, a donut or a hand or a star, it attracts people. I'm not sure it's a good idea because the people who are at the end of the hand, they are very isolated from the labor market. You can go only on the center. And we found that in many modern cities, many of the trips are from suburbs to suburbs because, the thing that the jobs usually move away from the center to other things. So that's just for little history to give you something a little less abstract than my talk right now. So thank you very much. This is, sorry, there were also, that was some demographic projection. And this graph I find very interesting. It's just data from Copenhagen that suddenly they managed to increase the number of newly built houses in the last few years and compared to before. So I'm sure that was a reaction to, again, a strategy. Housing was becoming very expensive, and they managed to more than, multiplied by 3 or 4 within a year. And so this, again, there's some example of transport data, and again, where they differentiate very much what they do for the citizen of the municipality and the citizen who come to work in the municipality. They make a very big difference in that. So, thank you very much. This is the end of my talk. Thank you. Thank you.
Pessoal, a gente tem mais uma rodada agora aqui especial para o evento, para a gente não cansar. Reservamos e convido já a nossa diretora de planejamento, Patrícia Tchepke, junto com a coordenadora, Vanesca. Anthony Ling, por favor, esteja aqui na mesa conosco para nos ajudar um pouquinho na tradução, junto com o nosso palestrante. Agradecer Alain, pela oportunidade muito rica de trazer a tua visão, a tua caminhada, a tua experiência pelo mundo. Nós estamos aqui em Porto Alegre no processo de revisão do nosso plano diretor da cidade e justamente... Só um pouquinho. Por favor, a Letícia e a Gisele também já subam aqui no palco, vão nos ajudar um pouquinho com as perguntas. Então, nós estamos com a revisão do plano diretor, como eu disse no começo, em curso, e queremos mudar um pouco essa perspectiva de plano diretor que a gente visualiza em grande parte das cidades brasileiras e talvez no mundo. Um plano diretor muito de regras urbanísticas, recuos, afastamentos, alturas e pouca ação, né? Poucos dados, pouco monitoramento. Então, é nesse sentido que a gente traz para o plano diretor de Porto Alegre uma visão de resolver os desafios reais da cidade, né, Patrícia? Porque nós vamos fazer leitura comunitária nos processos participativos, nas audiências, nos debates, e o que a gente ouve, né, da população? As pessoas querem escola, elas querem habitação, elas querem infraestrutura, elas querem praça, elas querem regularização fundiária, e o plano diretor, por muitas vezes, tratando de uma cidade real, muito distante daquela vida prática, daquelas necessidades. E é nessa perspectiva que a gente tenta mudar um pouquinho a chave do nosso plano diretor atual, trazendo, então, tentando reprisar, ou, enfim, objetivar a essas demandas da comunidade em 5 principais objetivos gerais do novo plano diretor de Porto Alegre. Claro que nós temos a conferência logo em seguida e vamos debater um pouco das estratégias para alcançar esses objetivos, mas de uma forma muito sucinta eu queria resumir para trazer um pouco para o Alain essa nova visão e depois pedir a opinião dele, se estamos no caminho certo, mais ou menos, né? Tentando fazer um pouquinho, mudar essa realidade. Acho que tu pode passar ali, Matheus, por favor, só para a gente passar nos nossos objetivos. Então, saindo um pouco desse planejamento urbano mais reativo de regras a partir, né, da demanda do privado, da análise do projeto privado, para um planejamento urbano, um plano diretor mais proativo. Por exemplo, um dos novos focos aí do nosso novo plano diretor é fortalecer, qualificar, potencializar a gestão do espaço público. Esse tem que ser o olhar, né, do planejamento urbano, do plano diretor, né, estratégico. Nós temos que qualificar as áreas públicas, né, fazer a arborização, arrumar as calçadas, a infraestrutura, gerar qualidade de vida na cidade, para a gente reter o nosso talento, para a gente atrair novos talentos, né? A qualidade de vida hoje que muitas vezes né, o que gera a tomada de decisão para tu viver naquela cidade ou na outra cidade. Tu pode, né, trabalhar em qualquer lugar do mundo, remotamente, mas tu escolhe a cidade muito, né, em função da qualidade de vida, somado, né, ao que o Alain bem colocou, em primeiro lugar, ao mercado de trabalho. Depois, como segundo objetivo deste novo plano diretor, né, Patrícia, a gente traz a redução do custo da habitação. Né, eu acho que não está na ordem ali, porque eu não estou enxergando muito bem, está longe. Mas, em terceiro, né, a redução do custo da habitação e a garantia do acesso de todas as cidades. E aí, como o Alain bem colocou, com base em dados, indicadores reais, né, o preço do imóvel, como é que está se comportando com relação à região metropolitana, como é que está se comportando com relação ao Brasil, né, o que cada uma das camadas de regra que a gente cria no plano diretor, o que interfere no preço final da terra, que, consequentemente, vai para o preço final da habitação. Né? A gente tem que entender, compreender esse mercado, especialmente o mercado, né, imobiliário, para tu saber o reflexo de cada uma decisão que tu cria. E a gente diminuir o custo dessa habitação, garantindo também o acesso de todos, né, à cidade, a regularização fundiária, levando projetos de espaço público para essas regiões, né, deficitárias, que não são a cidade real. É isso que tu tem que ter o foco, né, que tem que ser o foco do planejamento urbano, muito mais proativo, né, muito mais em dados e não reativo, como as estruturas que a gente conhece. Depois, outro grande desafio da cidade, nosso terceiro objetivo, reduzir o tempo de deslocamento das pessoas nos trajetos diários. Mobilidade é um grande desafio da cidade. Né? Quanto mais tempo a gente desloca no trânsito, menos tempo a gente tem para a nossa família, para gerar riqueza, para gerar oportunidade na nossa cidade. Então, isso tem que ser o foco do novo plano diretor. Algumas coisas de regulação, né? Pensando na infraestrutura, como é que a gente vai adensar nas regiões próximas às grandes avenidas, né? Aproveitando as infraestruturas existentes, são coisas de regulação, mas também muitas coisas de gestão, de ação mesmo, de alternativa de modais, né? De qualificar o transporte público, porque isso é um desafio real da cidade. Então, essa é uma perspectiva que a gente traz também para o plano diretor. Depois, quarto objetivo que está muito presente, uma realidade aqui de Porto Alegre, do Rio Grande do Sul, do mundo todo, né? A gente não lê mais nos jornais, a gente vive aqui os efeitos das mudanças climáticas, né? Chuvas extremas, alagamentos, períodos de calor, seca, e é nessa perspectiva que a gente traz, então, a necessidade, no quarto objetivo, de adaptar a cidade para essa nova realidade e reduzir as emissões, né, mitigar elas. Tem que ser a perspectiva do planejamento urbano, fazer projeto de drenagem, buscar recursos, fazer financiamento, tirar as pessoas das áreas de risco, dar uma condição, né, digna para essas pessoas. Isso tem que ser a perspectiva, claro, somado ao processo natural de crescimento da cidade, né, estimulando através de certificações sustentáveis, criando modelos que a cidade ela cresce naturalmente, mas pensando sempre em mitigar esses gases de efeito estufa, especialmente, né, o do transporte. Grande parte das emissoras no território urbano tem origem no transporte. E o quinto objetivo do nosso plano diretor, muito também alinhado, acho que o que o Alain traz aqui, é fortalecer a figura do planejamento urbano com base na economia urbana, ou seja, com dados reais, acompanhamento, monitoramento, mais ação a partir daquela cidade real para corrigir os problemas, e não tanto na regra previamente estabelecida através de um parâmetro tópico que alguém determinou em algum momento e se estabeleceu na lei. Não, o planejamento urbano, o plano diretor, ele tem que ter essa perspectiva de tu poder agir, resolver o problema real na cidade, claro, amparado por dados. A cidade, a vida em cidade gera muito riqueza, muita oportunidade. E a gente tem que saber aproveitar essa oportunidade, essa riqueza do mercado e direcionar, naturalmente, para resolver todos os desafios da cidade, né? E a gente traz aqui, antes desse quinto objetivo de fortalecer o planejamento urbano, resolver esses outros quatro desafios. E a gente precisa deste fortalecimento do planejamento urbano, pensando na estrutura pública da administração como um todo, nas hierarquias, na estrutura, para fazer, de fato, resolver todos esses outros desafios. Então, é nessa perspectiva, Alain, que nós trazemos o nosso novo plano diretor, muito pautado nesses 5 objetivos de cidade. E, a partir disso, a gente quer estabelecer indicadores reais, vamos discutir as estratégias desses objetivos, que são, né, diversas, a gente está justamente nesse debate, mas foi o que a gente colheu dessa leitura comunitária da necessidade da população. São problemas reais da cidade. Porque a gente tem convicção de que se a gente ataca esses problemas reais, se a gente resolve esses desafios, a gente cria riqueza na nossa cidade, a gente retém talento, a gente atrai talento e a gente faz não só transformação econômica, mas principalmente transformação social. Estamos no caminho? Pergunto, Alain. E o medo da resposta.
Sim. Yes, I think I could see, you are by law obliged to prepare this master plan every 10 years, but I think that it's very compatible with creating a permanent structure and not relying only on and you could use the resource of the master plan to transform the structure and then start acquiring more mechanism for acquiring more data. Many of the projects you were talking about, including flooding, for example, global warming, things like that, are very, very adaptable to indicators, and also, again, impact indicators and input indicators, which you call. And I think that it's completely compatible, yes. Basically, you have already put your priority there. I mean, from there, the work is in the urban planning department to just design, and the feedback. Sometimes they will maybe want to expand it or reduce it a bit or something, and I think it's a right track, yes.
Think so.
Obrigada, Alain, por nos prestigiar, assim, nos dá esse prestígio de poder ver essa visão, né, que muitas vezes é provocativa, né? E nesse sentido que eu queria fazer a pergunta. Então, nessa discussão da publicação do teu livro, a gente viu algumas discussões em que a gente ouve críticas de algumas pessoas em relação à tua visão como urbanista, né? Que, ele entendendo que é defendida a desregulamentação total da cidade. E aí, com isso, essa visão entende que isso diminui o papel do planejamento. Entendo que a tua palestra fez muitos esclarecimentos em relação ao papel do planejamento, né? Mas eu gostaria de, vamos dizer, de te dar a oportunidade de poder, resumidamente, dar uma resposta a essa visão que, no meu entendimento, seria equivocada.
Thank you very much for giving me this opportunity. First, on deregulation. I do not advocate deregulation. I use, even in my book, a metaphor. I'm saying we should consider the regulation of the city like a tree which is producing fruit. Periodically, in a fruit tree, you have to cut some branches so that the tree will be more productive. The objective is not to cut branches. The objective is to get the tree more productive. When I advocate, I don't advocate to remove regulation. I advocate to do an audit of regulation and to every regulation to say, for instance, say a minimum plot size. What is the objective of this regulation? What is the impact of this regulation? Does it serve a purpose? If nobody can answer, get it out or replacing it by something else. I am not advocating, for instance, touching things like fire regulation or sanitation. For instance, fire regulation, it's very technical. It changes with technology. It has to be done by very, very clever specialists. It is maybe a case where you may have to hire consultants. It's very specialized. And I don't think it's a good idea to remove fire regulation because, again, minimum plot size, minimum apartment size, whoever wants a house can see it by themselves. There is a complete symmetry of information. You know, they can see where this house is located, how large it is, whether it has a garden or if it's on the 5th floor, so they can decide what they want. Whether this building is going to take fire in 5 minutes, they don't know. So this is where the regulation has to guarantee that it will not take fire. You know, you remember some years ago in London, there was this terrible fire because of insulation they have put the thing. So that's something, that's a responsibility of the city and the responsibility of regulation. So I am not against regulation at all. I am against regulation which are useless. I am against the dead wood that you have, you know. Then on the planning staff, of course, to the contrary, I would like planners to have more role, probably more planners, or more specialized, and because it's a full-time job just to monitor what is happening and to propose strategy to react to this. And so, for instance, you were talking about global warming, and you are also on a river, and I think it's a tidal river, right? So you could get the effect of. So again, here it may accelerate, it may slow down. We don't know. We have to react. You know, you have to have people who are really working full time on that. What are the alternatives, and how much money should be invested? You know, that again is a political things. You know, how to allocate the money, because the needs are infinite. So that's why you should not go by needs, but priorities and affordability. So thank you. Yes, thank you for giving me this opportunity.
Obrigada. Acho que também a pergunta que eu vou trazer, ela já na apresentação já teve uma série de respostas para ela, mas acho que é um debate importante que tem nos se eu posso dizer, nos assombrado um pouco na revisão do plano diretor. Porto Alegre teve uma perda populacional considerável aí registrada no último censo. Porto Alegre tem uma população que está envelhecendo, então não está conseguindo atrair pessoas jovens, ou as pessoas jovens estão saindo da cidade. E a gente tem visto que isso tem uma correlação bastante forte com o plano diretor, que não conseguiu garantir que se tivesse uma cidade que fosse viável, que fosse acessível para essa população, que acabou não conseguindo adquirir imóveis, não conseguiu fazer a sua vida dentro da cidade. Muitas pessoas trabalham em Porto Alegre e não moram em Porto Alegre. O Centro Histórico é um lugar emblemático para isso, onde a gente tem uma população que circula e trabalha muito maior do que a população que reside. A gente tem colocado que isso também é, em parte, um insucesso do plano, e nos causa até uma certa... um certo espanto, que muitas pessoas perguntam o que deu certo e o que deu errado do plano. A gente entende que, lendo que os objetivos do plano são muito alinhados com o que a gente está colocando aqui hoje, ele não deu certo quase que por completo, no sentido de que ele tentou preservar características da cidade e impedir transformação de algumas áreas, e, ao impedir essa transformação, acabou limitando o acesso de uma população a essas áreas. Então, acho que é importante a gente entender, e acho que aqui já teve também algumas indicações em relação a isso, de qual o papel que nós, como planejadores, temos que ter para realmente enfrentar esse problema, que é um problema que a nossa cidade tem hoje, que a gente enxergou bastante em muitos dos exemplos que foram colocados ali. Então, acho que eu traria um pouco essa pergunta de quais as competências que a gente deveria estar desenvolvendo e preocupados em desenvolver numa equipe de planejamento urbano, numa equipe que pensa os espaços públicos e, principalmente, em entender o impacto que existe na economia da cidade dessas decisões que são tomadas. Acho que até achei muito curioso essa questão de se ninguém consegue defender uma regra, por que ela existe, né? A gente pergunta para as pessoas que participaram do plano diretor da elaboração desse conteúdo de 99 e muitas das regras são inexplicáveis. Então, acho que isso já nos acende um alerta de que a gente tem que ter uma virada e ter uma atuação um pouco diferente no planejamento. Então, acho que falar um pouco sobre isso, eu sei que tem vários colegas nossos aqui da prefeitura, inclusive colegas de outras secretarias, que têm ficado um pouco em dúvida, mas o planejamento vai, então, ter o conhecimento sobre todas as áreas da cidade. E sim, nós deveríamos, mas hoje nós não temos. Então, acho que são essas questões que eu trago um pouco assim mais em relação à nossa gestão mesmo e como a gente tem que atuar no planejamento. Obrigada.
Yes, I think that in terms of staff, your first question was the staff. Certainly, you should have economists, urban economists, join the staff. It doesn't mean that they replace planners. It means that they come working with planners. Economists have a tendency not to participate in decision for some reason, and I've seen that all over the world. I suppose it's the same in Brazil. Many of them are academic, and they are very valuable. They do a lot of things, but for some reason they are never invited to take decision. When decisions are made, it's only after something has been done. Sometime a city commission economist to say, what do you think of our zoning plan? And the economists will say, well, this is good, this is terrible, but it's too late because when a zoning plan has been voted, very difficult to change it after that. So if there had been an economist at the time of the decision, he will have given a different perspective. I have not only economists, but also financial people. I had the surprise in China, when I was working in China, and the mayor was a member of the Communist Party, obviously, but they had more understanding of economics, urban economics, than the mayor of New York. And because when a decision was taken about land use, there was also the financial officer of the city there, because we'll look at what revenue this land use will give to the city. And he will say, well, wait a minute. If you want to have only low rise in this area, we are going to lose that much into land value that will sell, things like that. So in a way, you had a communist mayor who understood better economics than the mayor of New York at the time. I'm not talking about the current one. So I think that's important. Now, after that, yes, you know, what is important is that the team be permanent. You know, that there will be so there is a continuity in things, and a continuous advice to the elected officials. You know, that giving a feedback. Again, some strategy may not work, or you may think you have the money to do it, but you become short of it. Then you have to look for something else, and you have to do it in real time. When I see, for instance, the city of Vancouver, where I was, with their price-income ratio of 12, which is one of the highest in the world, it didn't come overnight. It came over a period of 15 years, you know, because 20 years ago, the ratio was 4 instead of 12, you see. So this rate kept climbing up. Nobody reacted. And if they had reacted before, it would have been much easier to solve. So you see, again, if they had a planning, so people who understand, and you know, you should not have an economic department, I think, and a planning department. You should have a planning department which have urban economics, and you know, maybe I speak like that because I learned economics as a planner. I am a very traditional architect by training. You know, they call the Beaux-Arts in Paris. You can make more traditional. But I learned economics by working side by side with economists. And then we realize what is our complementary skills. You know, it's not a report on economics and a report of planning. We work together, and then we have a joint report which reflects, you know, the two, you know, it's not 2 points of view, it's 1 point of view, but the 2 dimensions of planning, you know, the physical aspect of it and the economics of it.
Boa tarde. Nós, arquitetos e urbanistas, temos uma preocupação permanente com o dimensionamento de moradias e apartamentos, sobretudo aqueles destinados à população de baixa renda. E essa preocupação se acentua na medida em que também estamos revisando o Código de Obras de Porto Alegre. Como chegar a um dimensionamento ideal de moradia, considerando que o último censo demográfico demonstra que a família média brasileira está encolhendo?
Well, like everywhere, you know, family are shrinking practically everywhere. In New York City, the maximum densities were calculated by number of dwelling per acre based on a household size of 4.5, if I remember well, many years ago. This maximum density are still there, but in Manhattan at least, the average household size is, if I remember well, something like 1.8 or 1.6, something like that. So the density are completely bogus, you know, they're not. So I don't think there is an ideal size for housing. I think that it's all dependent, you know, every household's making trade-off. Where they want to live in the city, how much they want to consume in terms of floor space, whether they want to live in apartment or individual houses, and where, of course, this is located. And during the life of a household, those priorities will change also. You know, for a young couple, maybe they will rather be in a very small, you know, a very small studio in the center of town at the beginning of their life. And then when they have children, of course, they will make trade-off to move a little further away to have more. But so there is not ideal. I think the ideal is to let every household make their own choice. So to me, the size of apartment also depends very much on the way you design those apartments, the way you furnish those apartments, and so it's a very there is no scientific way of doing it. I think you should leave the liberty to the people who develop housing for, usually developers have a size of the market, a slice of the market where they are familiar with. And I think that, unfortunately, now, because of your high standards, probably there are not many formal developers who have experience for low-income housing. That's not their clients. So they will have to develop those skills. Maybe some skills, for instance, when I visited Florianopolis last time, I was amazed in the illegal area of Rio Vermelho. I don't know if you are familiar with that. The minimum lot size in Rio Vermelho, legal, is 355 square meter. They were very nice houses on 90 square meter lots, and they were very nice. Built by contractor, they were not shacks. Huh? We are still working there to find what the price were, things like that. And there was a huge variety in this illegal settlement. What is interesting for me in illegal settlement, because they answer a bit your question here, is that here there are developers, the informal developers, who are completely free of regulation, but they know their clients. They cannot survive if they don't sell the houses they built. And within the same settlement of Rio Vermelho, even sometime along the same street, you see many different types of houses. Some, for instance, have clearly two apartments with an external staircase, one above another. So it's a bit a townhouse, but it's a design. Others are just very narrow. Others are much larger. And so here you have, in fact, a number of developers who are responding to demand. Again, we always think that a lot of people think, yesterday in particular in the conference, a lot of people were talking about that developers necessarily are only interested in high-income housing. They are interested in high-income housing because under the current condition, it's very, very expensive to develop a house because it takes too long, because you have regulation. But if you look at other sector of the economy, for instance, you look at shoes, you have people who produce very expensive shoes, but you have also plastic sandals, and maybe there is more money to be made in plastic sandals than in Louboutin shoes, or something like that. So I think that if you let a lot of flexibility for the private sector to provide houses according to the demand, you will have this. Now, what will be interesting, for instance, in Rio Vermelho, is we are working on that to find what is the bottom. What income do they reach by having? These are not shacks. They are real houses. So, what can, under current condition, what can a private developers? What is the bottom? What is the minimum cost of a house? In Rio Vermelho, how far and how many people are left out? There are certainly people left out, of course, because Rio Vermelho is not a favela traditionally. And then we could learn from the favelas. Again, looking at the standard, I will do a survey of favelas and set an arrangement. I don't think you develop much on slope here, right? You don't have favela on slopes. It's mostly flat. But the way they the way they develop slope, I think, is interesting because on some slopes you could not develop a formal development. It will be impossible because of cut and fill. So I think there is a lot to learn there. To answer your question, very long answer to your question, there is no ideal, but again, the special purpose of the planners in this cell will be to do exactly answer your question. You know, using existing experience in Porto Alegre.
Obrigada.
Boa tarde. Então, vamos para uma última pergunta, né, que trata de uma questão da expansão urbana, da habitação de interesse social, que aqui em Porto Alegre, como em muitas outras grandes cidades, tanto do Brasil e do mundo, né, ela vai espalhando a cidade, né, e aumentando essa mancha urbana e aumentando a necessidade do município prover serviços para essa população que geralmente é mais carente. E de que forma que o planejamento urbano poderia abordar essa questão, tornando a cidade mais compacta, mas também não deixando que as pessoas possam escolher também onde querem morar, fazer esse equilíbrio, né? Gostaria de ouvi-lo. Obrigada.
I think that there is not an optimum. You know, when you say compact city, I hear compact city all the time, but I've never heard a number. You know, what is a compact city? Is it a city where the average density is, like, say, for instance, like Paris, 250 people per hectare, or it is like Los Angeles, 20 people per hectare, or it is like Houston, 7 people per hectare, or Hong Kong, 650 people per hectare. So all this, you know, what is it? I think that you have to adjust to your conditions here of transport. It's a little dangerous to say, let's put a limit around the city, like a green belt, or an urban boundary like they have in Portland, Oregon, because the effect will be to increase the price of land. You know, again, I get back to my plan of Cerda. You know, people maybe at the time of Cerda, they were not concerned by sprawl, I suppose, at the time. But, you know, they will say, well, it allows people to go much farther for the city, and we will have to provide services, where at the time of Cerda, it was just a survey. You know, they were just markers. They didn't build the road. So, what I say about Cerda plan, the advantage, is that precisely it allows the market to work, and in my opinion, it allows a more compact city, because if the land is more affordable close to the city, you will have people closer to the city. If you have a green belt, the land price, when it reaches the green belt, will be very high. So the poor will jump over the green belt. This was we have seen practically, you know, so few cities, by the way, many cities have green belt. Few enforce them because they are so difficult to enforce because of the land price. But if you look at London, for instance, we still have green belt. So in the green belt, you have mostly, you don't have much agriculture. You have mostly clubs and golf course. In Vancouver, I discovered they have, it's not quite a green belt, but it's an agricultural land reserve to prevent also expansion. And so everybody is saying, well, we have to preserve agriculture. But then somebody who did a survey say, they're only raising cannabis there, you know, in the green belt. So officially it's agriculture, but it has an effect on prices. So I think that, you know, the effect, you have to let people decide where to live. You have to be clear about where the infrastructure will go and when. You know, if there is an area which will have no water in the next 10 years, it should be clear. But if the supply of new land is not enough for your population, you are going to have high housing price, and then we will get back to, again, the aging of the population, you know, because that's a result of it at the end, you know, but that takes time, you know, that takes time. So it's a bit like global warming, you see. We know the effect at long run, but say from day to day, you don't see the difference. And, but when you pass a certain stage of aging, you know, the way I've seen in Japan, for instance, nobody knows how to reverse that. You know, it's a bit like deflation. You know, economists knows more or less how to deal with inflation. When a country is deflated, we don't know what to do. And I think that if you are an aging population, so you see, in a way, what you are talking about is linked to aging of population, because if you have a preconceived idea about what the amount of land should be in order to get a compact city, you limit the supply of land, and therefore you increase prices. If you limit and it doesn't increase prices, it means, in fact, that you are not limiting it, that nobody will have gone over your boundary anyway. You see, so that's, so then why do it? So, but it's again, that will be a question that your planners and economists, you see, again, this is a question of planning. You know, the planner will say, hey, it will take so long to commute there, we will have to expand water there. And then the economists could say, well, this is the effect on the housing market. And then they have to work together, you know, not two separate reports. So it's a good illustration to answer that. You know, again, I could not give an answer to that, but I could see the framework to that. Thank you.
Alain, que rica oportunidade a gente está tendo hoje aqui em Porto Alegre. O conhecimento, ele transforma, eu tenho certeza que hoje ele transformou um pouquinho mais as nossas mentes e teremos muitos frutos, tanto na nossa revisão do plano diretor, quanto no nosso planejamento urbano, no futuro da nossa cidade. Então, muito obrigado por estar aqui conosco, por compartilhar o teu conhecimento, por se deslocar de tão longe e vir aqui contribuir. Não, a gente organizou uma dinâmica agora, nós temos um pequeno café na sequência. Então, Alain, obrigado pela oportunidade de estar aqui.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Thank you very much. It's always a pleasure to come back to Porto Alegre. Thank you.
Translation, okay?
Yes, yes, yes.
There are some critics who wanted to ask questions.
Yes, yes. I wish I could have done this. But in a way.
Hello. I am a prosecutor from Porto Alegre.
Yes.
Yes. I'd like an autograph.
Yes.
Sim.